Well, welcome everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Naomi and I'm the Donor Relations Associate here at Friends of Gong Road. And welcome. We're so excited to have you at our first educational gathering to learn more about your students. And so for tonight's goals are going to be to learn about where your students live, their living conditions, kind of get an understanding and general overview about Kenya and Dagoretti, and then also inspire and encourage some more communication between sponsors and students. If you can learn a little bit more about where they come from, hopefully we'll be able to better have that connection with our students when we're sending messages to each other. And thankfully, we have two co-hosts. We have our operations manager, Michonne, and our board member, Kim Jensen, who I'm sure all of you know. We're going to first hear from Michonne talking about the geography of Kenya, Nairobi, and Dagoretti. And then her and Kim both are going to talk about what it's like visiting Nairobi and, what it sounds like, what it smells like, what you see, what you hear, and what it was like meeting the students. And as Michonne already said, it's going to be a really informal presentation. So please ask questions, interrupt us, have a conversation with us. We don't want it to be really boring, just us presenting to you guys. So yeah, I think that's all I have. And there'll be time for questions and answers at the end as well. But otherwise, Michonne, you can take it away unless, Kim, you have anything you want to add?
No, let's just get right into it. Thank you.
Okay, so I am going to tell you a little about Kenya. This is a map of Africa, and the white arrow is pointing to where Kenya is. So Kenya is on the eastern side of Kenya. It borders the Indian Ocean. It's around it is Ethiopia, Somalia, Uganda. During the civil war in Somalia, Kenya actually received a lot of immigrants and people that were coming in and staying in camps that were set up in Kenya. So for those of you that live here in Minneapolis, I know I went to high school with some people who were Somalian, but they said they were Kenyan because they fled Somalia and stayed in these camps in Kenya and then identified as being Kenyan after that. So that's what that relationship is. They're very, very close together. If you zoom in, this is now Kenya. So you can see it's got the Indian Ocean there on the eastern edge. Way down at the bottom is a little city called Mombasa. So that's like the vacation spot. That's where the people go when they're going to go have a weekend trip at the ocean. We have a couple of our alumni live in Mombasa and do some tourist type jobs. So that's important. And then the red dot, you can see right in the middle, the red square there, that is Nairobi. So that's the capital. Some other things that you might be familiar with are on the western border. So on the left side over there is Lake Victoria. You may have heard of that before. And then it's not on this map, but just south of Nairobi is Mount Kilimanjaro on the border of Tanzania and Kenya. We're going to zoom in a little bit. This is what Nairobi looks like. So Nairobi is a super urban, super modern city. It's got all the amenities. It's very quickly growing. It's got luxury apartment buildings, luxury hotels, and all of that kind of stuff. It kind of has everything that a growing city would have. But interestingly, it also has slums. So this is Nairobi County. So there was that square dot that was Nairobi, which is the central part, which you see right in the middle of this map. And so this is all considered Nairobi County. So you can see kind of in the middle of this map on the right-hand side over there is the airport. And then over on the left, where this arrow is pointing, that's Dagoretti. So that's when we say our students live in Dagoretti, this is what we're referring to. There's a Dagoretti north and south, but it's all encompassed in this area of Dagoretti. And then you may also notice from this slightly blurry map that there's this red line going through the middle that's labeled Gong Road. So Gong Road runs just south of that downtown that I just showed you that picture of. Nairobi, it's kind of hard to know how many people live in Nairobi, I have learned. So they say that about 4.7 million people live in Nairobi, and that 70% of those people live in slums. So this next map I'm going to show you is my favorite one. This is the same map. It's the same Nairobi County, but it's split up by the types of living situations or the income levels that people have. So the black spots on here are the slums. So you can see that a lot of the slums over on the left side are in Dagoretti, right? So, and along, if you remember where that road was, where Gong Road was, there's a lot of black spots along that area. So those are big slum areas. Then the central business district right in the middle is really tiny. That's where that picture of downtown was. And then that white area is unbuilt. That's forest. That's the Gong Forest. So Gong Road runs kind of along this Gong Forest, and there's kind of slums on one side and Gong Forest on the other side. So something that I just learned recently is that when Kenya gained its independence from Britain in 1963, it was at this point that people were given the right to live anywhere. So people that lived in Kenya, there was a lot of gatekeeping around who could live in the city, who couldn't live in the city. It wasn't quite apartheid, but it was kind of a similar mindset where certain people had to live in certain places. Then when they got independence, people were given the right to live anywhere. And so people just flooded the city. Everybody wanted to live there. They thought that's where the jobs opportunities were. And so people just were coming and coming and coming to the city. And the government thought, how can we deter so many people from coming to the city, because we don't have the infrastructure for this? So they actually decided not to put water access, sewage, electricity access into these living situations to try to deter people from coming to the city. And guess what? It didn't work. So people kept coming, and the slums kept growing and growing and growing. And the government decided not to do anything about it. And so Kenya and Nairobi is now home to one of the biggest slums in Africa. It's called Kibera. It's not the slum where our kids live, but it's a major slum. You may have heard of it before. And I just thought that was super interesting, that not only did the government not attempt to help the situation, they actually created this situation. So the size of Nairobi actually tripled in about 15 years after Kenya gained its independence, and has just continued growing since then. So that's kind of a little bit of a history and a background about why these slums exist. They've only, as I said, they've only existed for 60-ish years. Of course, people lived in poverty before then, but these urban slums right outside of Nairobi, where people are really, really packed in, are relatively new as of the last 50 or so years. Our students obviously have grown up there since they're young, and people are just really resilient. They figured out how to make it work, how to share with each other and share resources. And you go to this person's house to have your laundry done, and you go to this person's house to have them make you this type of food. And they have their own kind of infrastructure in the slums because they know they're not going to get the help from the government. Does anybody have any questions about, we just wanted to give you kind of a basic overview to orient you a little bit about where these students are. So they're in Africa, they're in Kenya, they're in Nairobi, and they're in this very specific slum along Gong Road called Dagoretti. So you may hear any of those terms as we're talking about the kids. So any questions about any of that? I just kind of threw a lot at you there.
And Michonne, they themselves refer to living in the slum, right? It's not a derogatory term per se, right?
Right. Yeah.
I also have a question. So Dagoretti is bigger than, there's like 5 different dots in that Dagoretti area. So Dagoretti is not only a county, but it's also a slum within Dagoretti County. Is that what I'm hearing?
So Dagoretti is split up into a couple of different things. Dagoretti is not its own county. It's like an area of Nairobi County.
Okay.
So there's Dagoretti North and South. There's a Dagoretti slum. There's like an area of Dagoretti that's also called Dagoretti. So it's a little bit confusing. I tried to simplify it as much as I could. Most students live in Dagoretti North or South.
Okay.
Any other, you can also see on this that I thought was very interesting, there's a poverty line. So you can see on the right-hand side of the map, there's more kind of middle income. And then over on the left-hand side, there's more low income. And so it's just really, I thought this map was absolutely fascinating, especially seeing those kind of spots of slums specifically in Dagoretti.
Mm-hmm. Nadia just sent me a note, which I really agree with, which is that this introduction here, getting the lay of the land from the geography and then into the kind of a socioeconomic breakdown here is really insightful. And we could use this as a great introduction to other kind of sponsorship, recruitment, if you will, presentations. It's really good.
I find context to be helpful everywhere in life. And so especially with these kids, when you're trying to understand how did they get into this situation? Who are they? Where did they come from? It's people that are coming from their tribes and from all over these different areas in Kenya who came to the city for opportunity. Keith has his hand raised.
I just wanted to point out that to the far left, there's a high income area. Mm-hmm. And I think from being there, that's Karen.
Karen, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where, out of Africa and all that stuff took place. So it's also interesting that it's a very high income right next to the slum. Mm-hmm. You see how close everybody lives to each other. So there's not like a bad area where nobody goes to. It's all sprinkled all through the city.
I was thinking the same thing. You just look at one side of the road and it's slums, and the other side they're probably skyscrapers. Like that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that really is how it is. I mean, that's kind of a good transition into what it's really like there. And Kim, I'll let you take over in a minute here. I'll just share what my experience was when I went 4 years ago. And the first thing that hit me when I got on Gong Road was the smell. I mean, it just is kind of overwhelming. There's garbage on the streets, there's cows walking down the streets, there's people, and you can smell like it just is bustling, and the energy there is absolutely fantastic. I really loved it. But the smell is something that I was not prepared for. I think it was pretty shocking to me. It took some getting used to, for sure, just to have animals and people and garbage and sewage and all these things so compact all together. I think that's the thing that really kind of was my initial reaction Kim, do you want to share Kim was just there a couple months ago. So do you want to share, and this is one of your photos, isn't it?
I think it is. And I have a version of this photo that's a video. And one of my big takeaways from being in this area is that where it looks to all of us like so difficult and rustic and dramatically different than what we're used to seeing, people are happy. Mm-hmm. And in the version of that first picture that I have, that's an actual video, and I've shown it to some of my family members, you get 17 seconds into the video, and I'm taking a span along, all the businesses that you see along there. So we're in a car and we're going along, and I'm taking a video with my phone. And 17 seconds in, there's this little boy who is skipping, dancing all by himself, just in the midst of this stream of, observation. And it's like, yes, these living conditions look unimaginable to us. And these people are happy. They're happy. I didn't meet anybody who complained about their situation. Now I'm happy to get into a little bit of conversation about the pandemic and how that had a dramatic effect on a lot of these families' happiness factor. But generally speaking, as I say, their life is in context to yesterday, just like ours is in a sense. So I would say, to tag on to what Michonne was talking about, Nairobi was much more modern than I had imagined. Definitely in your face about the haves and have-nots. Keith mentioned Karen, which is right up against the Dagoretti slum. The haves and have-nots was just in your face everywhere. Driving down the street or Gong Road, horrible traffic, motorcycles scooting in and out between cars. As a matter of fact, they've set up a whole floor at the hospital, an entire floor for motorcycle accident victims. You can now buy a motorcycle in Nairobi for $3,000. And in fact, Tom and I talked, we were tempted to help our student who's graduated and looking for employment. We thought, well, maybe we should help him get a motorcycle. But you know, he'd probably be dead because there are just, it's crazy. So our first day there, we arrived on a Friday night late and just in time to show up on Saturday morning before the Saturday program began. And I've shared with many of you the beauty of the Saturday program, because now that you see how these families live and how important it is for the kids to spend their day at school learning, having a meal, you know, experiencing a different part of life. On Saturday, this is home, right? This is where they're running around these kind of rabbit trails that are often filled with sewage or trash or whatever. There's not a lot of room to play. And the Saturday program just opens up a whole new world for them. This picture shows the visit at the home of one of the 4 students that we sponsor. So the little boy closest to you on the screen there is Anifa, who Tom named the Dude. And he loved being called the Dude. And the Dude is wearing a tie-dye t-shirt that our granddaughters, Elsie and Sawyer, made a whole pile of tie-dye t-shirts for us to bring to the students. And so Anifa put his on before we even left the school that day. So anyway, so there's Anifa and Tom and I with Anifa's cousin and his mother. So Anifa has a mom, and a lot of these kids are under the care of an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or a friend, and it turns over and it's not always consistent, but that is Anifa's mom. So this is their home, which is the size of many of our, let's say our bathroom. And that day, the home was definitely decorated for our visit. And they were super proud and excited to have us. So the 4 students that we sponsor, Duncan is now 22. And Keith has gotten to know Duncan because we're all pulling, you know, to try to help Duncan get on his feet in life and get a full-time job and so forth. And sometimes he's his own worst enemy. But guess what? He's educated. He went to primary school, secondary school, trade school. Duncan has an education. The other 3 students, Miriam, the sweetest little girl you ever saw. I don't know if she's on the next photo or not. Yeah, there she is. Okay, so you got to see this. So Miriam is in the orange coat. Now this coat was like a boiled wool, okay? And it was about 85 degrees. And Miriam wore that coat for 3 days, the 3 days that we were together. She was so proud of it. She was dressed to impress. She was so happy about this occasion. And so there she is in her beautiful orange coat. The little boy you see there, Anifa, and then the other little girl is Vera. And Vera's mother, I think there may be a picture here too with Vera's mother. And I'll talk about her in a moment. Well, we can just do that now. So this is Vera's mother, right there, giving me a hug, and she just would not let go. She was so overcome with joy. She was so happy to receive us. As you can see, Miriam was incredibly embarrassed, but this woman and I hugged for the whole time that we were together. So that was super fun. The man that you can barely see in the background there is her husband, referred to as her husband. I don't know that if they're married or not, but this woman, Miriam's mom, is 100% focused on her daughter having an education. Most of the parents of these kids, or the next generation of these kids, they do not speak English. Most of them only speak Swahili. And so it's their children who are being educated to speak English. And all these kids do. I mean, they're learning in school, but their parents and their aunts, uncles, grandparents likely didn't go to school. And so this is the great gift for their generation, if they can just possibly get educated. So back to this, and then I'll move on. But Duncan is the one. So Tom, you recognize Tom in the middle. Duncan's the tall one who's 22. We have sponsored Duncan since he was 8 years old. And I brought the folder of all the letters and pictures that he had sent us over the years to show him how important he was in our life and our family, and that we'd saved them, you know. And then we had things that the kids had made for him. And it was really overwhelming. Lots of tears. He brought his girlfriend with him as well. We got to know her over the 3 days that we were there. Gardendia, a lovely young woman who, quite frankly, is now pregnant. One of the things we learned too, and I'm bouncing around a bit here, but one of the things we learned about this organization, as well as the schools, do a pretty good job of education around contraception and so forth. We've really tried to take that to the next level with our life skills program and so forth. But, you know, one of the things that I learned that I kind of can't get out of my head is that women will say, I think I'd like to have a child someday. And Paula shared this with us recently. I think I'd like to have a child someday, but I don't think I want to get married because I could end up with an abusive husband or partner. And during the pandemic, there was so much frustration, anxiety, anger, depression, you know, within the slum. When they went on lockdown in Kenya, can you imagine being locked down in the picture that we showed you a moment ago? So they're on lockdown. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. And, you know, all the worst comes out in people, right? And so, you know, that kind of spousal abuse and so forth is very real, very omnipresent. And one of the things that Wentz, one of the guys who runs the Saturday program, did is he took the kids through an exercise of drawing pictures and creating art around their experience during the pandemic and what their life was before, during, and trying to get them to a happy place after. And some of the things that they shared were really mind-boggling. So if we wonder whether our support is important, not only are we educating these kids, they are getting access to real world insight, support that will enable them to live a very different life than their parents did. So the Saturday program is a big part of that.
Keith has his hand raised, so we've got.
I just wanted to, Kelvin, the director over there, our program director, is very proud of the fact that we made it all the way through the pandemic with no teenage pregnancies, which it was like an endemic, a pandemic on top of a pandemic. In Kenya, there are a lot of teenage pregnancies, but we had absolutely none in our program. And he was very proud of that. And I think it's the sexual and reproductive health system that we have and the fact that there was a network of people that kept it from happening. So, you know, it was a big deal in Kenya. It was in all the press, and Kelvin was very proud of himself. So we should be too.
Yeah, we should be too. That's absolutely right. Because as soon as that happens, you know, girl stops going to school. She's not able to get employment. You know, everything changes. So that is a huge accomplishment. So I could go on and on, I guess, about our visit, but the thing that I really want to leave everybody with is how important it is. I have a number of friends who are sponsoring students in the program, I think almost 30. And I met most of them at the Saturday program. This was an outing that we did. So if you ever go to Kenya, I really hope that you do someday. And please let me know because I'd love to go with you. But there's a snake park nearby. And of course, Tom hates snakes. So these kids thought it would be hysterical to take Tom to the snake park. But at the snake park, they have these little cars that you could hop in and drive around. And of course, these girls had never done anything like this before. And little Miriam on the right-hand side there, she was doing everything she could, or Vera rather, doing everything she could not to smile. She did not want to let on that this was like super cool. And of course, Miriam thought it was the greatest thing ever, but there she is in her boiled wool coat, you know, looking snazzy as we're driving around this little racetrack. So that was a lot of fun. Here we are at the Nelson Mandela School. This is one of the primary schools that we partner with. And when Tom and I showed up to visit the school, all the students came out, all the teachers came out. They sang a greeting to us. I think they did the Kenyan national anthem and their school spirit song and had little speeches prepared. And it was just over the top, fantastic. And to see all these little smiling faces and their little red shirts, you know, all fired up and ready to be at school. And so a number of our students that you all are sponsoring are among these happy faces here at the Nelson Mandela School.
And on the right-hand side, that the grown man that you can see is Wentz, who you referenced earlier. And he was a student that came through our program. So he was one of them and went through college, got his post-secondary education, and was hired as a case manager and is now helping these kids through their process in the program. We're very proud of him.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And then here's Ilumu Hub, which I think everybody knows. Is it 5 shipping containers that we purchased? And
six.
Keith, you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. So this is the Elimu Hub. Elimu means learning in Swahili. And it's a 2-floor structure. There are 3 shipping containers up and 3 down. And then they knocked them out to make the library on the top, I believe, and the computer lab on the bottom. And I've never seen it. So I'm thrilled every time to see these pictures because it was a long time coming. It took a year almost to get, not to the actual construction took about a month. It was getting all the permits from the city. And the reason it took so long is that we won't pay bribes. And because of that, they make us jump through lots of hoops. But Kelvin finally did it. He had to lose his temper a couple times and said he was going to report people if they didn't give him his permit. And finally, they finally gave it. So it's up and running now.
That's Kelvin up on the top floor there on the left.
So that's Kelvin and my husband, Tom. And then the young woman,
is it Sally Ann?
It's
Can't tell
no.
It sounds like persistence.
Perpetual?
Perpetual. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perpetual. Perpetual was our photographer for the 3 days. So she followed us everywhere and took pictures. And so that was a lot of fun. And here we are back at the Saturday program. And a lot of the activities that you saw happening there were pretty organized. You know, there were organized games. There was a corner where kids were getting help with their homework. But what was kind of funny was there was a point at which all the girls got such a kick out of my hair for whatever reason, because they've got this awesome, curly, fun, braided hair. And mine, of course, is straight and soft. And they all wanted to touch my hair. So I've got this great picture of all these girls trying to touch my hair. But they're so loving and they want to talk and they want to listen and they want to know all about you and where you're from and what you care about and your family and how did you get here and how do you like Kenya, and just so eager. So I would tell you that if you decide to visit at some point, it was far less intimidating than I thought it might be, right? It's a little bit scary to walk into a scenario that is so unfamiliar. But everyone is so gracious. The students, the families, the staff. One of my most emotional moments was sitting when we sat down with the staff, and Kelvin went around the room and had everybody, all the staff members, the caseworkers, teachers, talking about how they came to the program, what is valuable about this for them, the difference that they see with the students in their lives. And that's when I lost it. It's like, these are the people who are making this happen every single day. And I'm just sitting back here in St. Pete, Florida, you know, sending a check every month. But they're making it happen with all the love and intelligence and insight that you can imagine. So you would be so proud to meet these people who are doing a fabulous job, truly. If you do decide to visit Kenya, there, as Michonne said, there are nice hotels, there are great places to stay. You can have good meals. This was one of the organized games, water balloon launching, which I completely failed at. It looks like that water balloon might have gotten some traction, but it didn't. So it was just fun, so rewarding. And, you know, I just want to say thank you to all of you for sponsoring these students, because it's to see it live, up close and personal. The difference that you're making is so rewarding. I just wish you could see it through your own eyes, because it was incredible. And I want to thank Michonne and Naomi, Keith, and John, and everybody on this call and everybody on the team for providing this opportunity for us as sponsors. It's pretty great.
Anybody have any questions for Kim or for me or Naomi or Keith about what the student's life is like in Kenya? Nadia.
Time to raise the hand. I wanted Kim to talk about again the food pack. Because I know that's an option for us to work through either you know, to maybe send a gift at some time, and these food packs that are available.
That's a great question. And we get that a lot. So Michonne and Naomi, maybe you can help us with this. But often we get asked, what else can we do to help? And I was explaining to Nadia that one of the things Tom and I did, hi Tom, Tom's on the call now, sitting out in the sunshine in Wayzata, we went to the grocery store and we bought food packs for each of the families of the students that we went to visit. And so it's the basics, you know, some grain and sugar, although they were out of sugar, and flour, and just a few basic items that get them a lot, you know, go a long way. And I think it's like $40 or something for a food pack. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how people could help further?
So we, Sanjeet, I also want to just tell you that I see you, and we'll come back to you. We have food packs available for families when they need it. So during COVID, we actually moved our sponsorship fund, since the students weren't in school, to food support. And so we supported every family in our program through the pandemic, giving them monthly food packets that included all the things that Kim mentioned, rice and beans and sugar and flour and all the basics, so that they could use what little income they have to buy things like fruits and vegetables and meats and kind of the additional things. So we want to give them their baseline. So Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have emergency food packs for any family that needs it. So if they lose a job or they can't make the food happen for that month, we do provide that for the families. The students are also all fed at school, and we monitor that. So if the schools have certain requirements of food that they have to give the kids. And then a big reason that we do Saturday program as well is to make sure that the kids are fed on the weekends. So we give them a healthy meal. When I was there, it was lentils and rice and goat meat and like something that was kind of like a pita. So we make sure that they're fed regularly, and we do have food packs available as well. Did I miss anything about that, Keith?
No, that's true. That's why we started Saturday program, actually, is that we were thinking, well, what do these kids do on the weekend? And the answer was they didn't eat. And so we decided we needed to have Saturday program, and it's grown from being a lunch program to being a whole child development thing, and they do reading and so on. And Kim, one of the things that's true there is it's very socially acceptable when you're visiting a home to take foodstuffs. That's kind of the expected gift, like a hostess gift. It's very common to take, a bag of rice or, the stuff you took. That's very well accepted in Kenya as sort of the thing that people do when they visit home. So it's not so unusual.
So, Keith or Michonne, so if we wanted to do something for, like, my little guy, Force, his birthday's in October, or I'm kind of gaining that they're Christian because he's always saying to me, God bless in our, so if I wanted to do something for them for some special occasion, would I contact you, Michonne, to help arrange that?
Yeah, me or Naomi. Our policy is that we can accept monetary gifts up to $100. And we would give that then to your student's case manager, and they would take him shopping. So whether that means whether that means they get some kind of a special meal for his birthday or clothes, $100 is a lot of money for them. So we had to put a cap on it. So any amount of money is up to $100 is fine. Even $20 would get him like a full new outfit. My student wanted a whole outfit when I was there. She wanted an all pink sparkly outfit. So everybody, they're individual kids. So yeah, if you have a special gift for your student, you can contact Naomi or me, any of us really, and we can get you in the right direction. And up to $100. And we would send the money to the case managers and have them manage the funds for the kids. We're not just going to hand them $100 bill. So, and Sanjita, you have something that you would like to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Kim, for sharing all these pictures with us. I wish my husband and son could have dialed in, but I'll send them the recording. As you know, my husband has a pretty big family in Kenya, in Nairobi, and they've lived there for over 50 years. So I think we don't see this other side. I've never been to Kenya. My husband's been there. So all we see is from the family side, and they probably live in that nice part that you talked about. So thank you for kind of giving us this other side of Nairobi that we didn't see or we didn't know about. And and thank you everyone for doing everything you guys do.
Thanks for being here.
I'll invite Tom to make a comment here as long as you're on, Tom. This was really a life-changing experience for both of us. And I mentioned earlier that it was a little bit intimidating at first because you don't know what you're walking into. And then it's like, am I just like this clueless person who has no experience, with your life? And are we going to be able to connect? And maybe I'll just turn it to you, Tom.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, honey. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yep.
All good? Okay, thanks very much. So I'll just say really quickly that one of the things it's kind of hard to imagine is honestly the amount of joy that is in this place that any of us would see as unbelievable hardship. That was astonishing to me. And to know that all of you, all of us, we're contributing to that joy and also to the long-term development both of these people and this country. I thought that was really quite amazing. And let me tell you, I don't know, I think maybe Kim, you sold short the hardship of being in Nairobi a little bit. Boy, there are plenty of places and plenty of moments that for us are rugged, are immensely, horribly difficult to watch, difficult to see. And yet there is immense pride, there's immense joy, and there is immense ingenuity, entrepreneurship as well. So being a part of that, I think is incredibly worthwhile. So I'll end with just saying thanks to everybody. And I know my mom is on as well. My mom and dad were the ones who really put in me the sense of joy in travel. And I owe them an immense debt for that. So what all you guys are doing is what we are doing together is wonderful and amazing. So I'll end with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. You know, he mentioned industriousness and resilience. And you saw the pictures where we're driving along Gong Road and looking at all the businesses and everything, and entrepreneurialism. Okay, so there was one woman running her shop, which was, you know, as wide as my desk. And her business was selling shoes, okay? She had a mound of shoes, like just a big pile of shoes. And she was out there with a bucket and some soap and a hose and a brush. And she was cleaning the shoes and then setting them, throwing them back on the pile so they would dry in the sunshine. And as we were going by, I said to Duncan, you know, the student, the oldest student that you saw earlier, who was sitting next to me in the car and didn't smell very good, I must say. That's one of my memories. But I said, Duncan
didn't smell very good? Is that what you're saying?
Duncan didn't smell.
Duncan needed some deodorant, maybe.
Yeah. Perfectly understandable.
Yeah.
So we're sitting next to each other in the car, and I said, look at this woman, she's working so hard, you know, it looks like a great business. And he said, well, you have to make things look good for the customer, you know, and it was surrounded by a big mud puddle because the water washing the shoes, and it was a big old mess around it, but she was displaying her product as clean for the customer. Duncan's girlfriend, Cardencia, she would describe her job as the receptionist at a furniture store, okay? The furniture store is also about as wide as my desk. And there are some guys behind her little table putting together chairs, you know, like sawing boards and then assembling chairs. And so this is the furniture store. And she's the receptionist taking the money for the chairs, right? And this is a job that puts food on their table every day, okay? And so just to see the ingenuity, the creativity, you know, that goes into, you know, living life.
Everyday life.
Incredible.
Keith, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say that when Paula was there just recently, she bumped into, or they heard that she was in town, so they came to see her, some of our graduates, and they tended to be, I don't know, let's call them our wayward boys. They were the ones that didn't really, I mean, they made it through school and they made it through a trade school, and then they kind of, who knows what happened to them. Now it's 3 or 4 or 5 years later, and they all turned up to say thanks to Paula, and one of them is now a butcher, and one of them has a little shop, and you know, so they took the skills that we gave them and they use them, even though I don't know, do all boys do this? They kind of wandered away for a while and then they came back. Because you have to realize there is no social safety net. You know, there is none. I mean, if you want to eat, you have to figure out how to get some money that day. That's, you know, there's nobody going to, you know, the family will help. They don't have any money either. So it is a very entrepreneurial place. They're all striving. And what we've done is give them some tools that put them up the ladder a bit. And so, you know, a butcher in Nairobi, you're talking middle class. That's the middle class. He can probably afford a small house and he's probably married and probably has a kid or two. And these were the kids that really, we wondered if they were ever going to make it through when they graduated from high school, but they all come back eventually. So I thought it was sweet that they made the effort to come and say thanks to Paula all those years later.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow.
They really get a community. I mean, even if they don't succeed in the traditional sense of making a lot of money and moving into a high-end apartment or however we want to determine success, they have a built-in community and a built-in support system and network of people that they can say, you know, I think anywhere in the world, you're kind of successful if you have people around you that are supporting you. I think that anybody would maybe determine that as success. And these kids have that. They have a whole network of people that they know who are loving and supporting them, who they can ask for contacts. And so as these kids continue to get older and transform their lives, they have a built-in network, which is only going to help them as they get older.
Another another kid that made sure to come and see Paula was a young guy who had been sponsored by a childhood friend of her husband's, and he came in and he said, "I want you to go tell Paula Johnson, not Paula Meyer, thank you so much for sponsoring me because now I know how much it meant." And he's a butcher too. I don't know if that's a trend that we have butchers, but. He made a special trip just to say that to Paula so that she would go and tell the other Paula, thank you. So it's a kind of, that's the rewarding part when they grow up and because when they're little, they don't know. It's like, so somebody somewhere way away is sponsoring me and that's all they know. They just don't really understand it. But when they get older, they start to really understand it and they really come back and make the point. So,
and that's why I think it was so emotional to meet with the staff because several of them had either been students in the program or had come in and volunteered at some point along the way and then just got kind of locked in. And that's what made it so real, is that a child can come out of one of these homes in the slum with uneducated somebody that takes care of them. They get to school every day. And today they're sitting here talking about their opportunity to give back and what the education had meant to them and how they want to lift these other kids up in the way that they were. That to me, that whole circle, when we were sitting in Calvin's office there, Tom, and that's when we both kind of, had our meltdown because it was just, this is why we're doing this, and that these people are so invested in lifting each other up is the great gift.
Naomi.
So I don't know if the others have questions.
I have a question for you, Kim. I haven't been to Kenya either. It's definitely something I want to do, but I know you both said that this was a life-changing experience for you. So how do you feel now, if at all, more connected to your students, or how does it change how you're going to sponsor, how you're going to talk to your students? Because you've now seen Duncan that you've sponsored for 15 years, but you also have these little ones too. So I want to know how this has changed your relationship and something like that.
Yes, great question. And Tom will answer part of this because he's been doing a lot of coaching with Duncan. But obviously the connection now is so much deeper than it would be otherwise. And so when we communicate using the website and sending pictures, we really do know each other. We've hugged and talked and laughed and gone shopping together and all of that. So there's a relationship there that is deeper than it would have been otherwise. But also I have a greater sense for the need to not let this go by the wayside. I think it might be tempting to, okay, my student graduates. That was great. I wish them well. But let me tell you, there are so many children waiting for sponsorships that it's all I can do not to scoop up another, half a dozen kids, because the need is so great and the impact is so positive. So that was a big part of the takeaway for me. And now I look forward to communicating with them versus, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? I don't really know what to say. We don't really know each other. Well, now we do. But Tom, you can talk about your relationship with Duncan and how that has grown.
Well, I think the question was really terrific because I would say that I'm not sure it changed Duncan a whole lot, though Duncan has his own path. And he's very recently, say in the last year, really come to be a stalwart fixture at this, at FONR. I mean, he's at the Saturday program. He's giving back. It's really quite amazing. He has very little to give, save his time, his energy, his leadership, and he's giving that. I would comment in answer to your question that honestly, I think the majority of the change was in me. It gave me, it's the difference between seeing a picture of the Grand Canyon and standing at the lip of the Grand Canyon. That's the difference. When you see these people in situ, they are, they're people that you care about, that to a certain extent, but you don't know to a very great extent. And to gain a real appreciation for the courage, the positivity, the joy that I spoke of a little bit earlier, to gain an appreciation of what is a part of their life and that you get to be a part of that as well. It's astonishing. That is the life-changing part, I think. Yes, it has a bit to do with how you communicate with your students. And, I know Nadia had a couple of questions about, should I do this or should I do that? For me, it didn't change so many of those things, but it gave me a much greater appreciation for a whole bunch of things, many of which I'm looking at right now, where I sit. That's the change. That's the remarkable change. And I'd like to add just very quickly something. It's a story that I told when I was there to the staff of FONR. It goes back to it's an old Italian story called The Starfish Thrower. And it's something that we're all doing together. The story is about a boy who's along the beach and a guy who's observing him. There's been a tide and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of starfish on the beach. They're all going to die. But this boy walking along bends down, he picks one up and he throws it back in, and walks along and he picks one up and he throws it back in. And the guy comes up to him and says, "Son, what are you doing here? You can't possibly make a dent in this. You can't possibly look at all this." And he reaches down, he picks up one and he throws it in. He says, "You're right. I can't make a difference for all of them, but I did for that one." And he walks on. That's, I think, what we're doing. And the great power is that Duncan is going back to FONR. He is a leader. And he was one of Keith's, until Keith, you and I know this, until very, very recently. He was one of Keith's kind of lost citizens, very much that. And, people develop different ways, different times, different things. And boy, oh boy, is it all perfect? No, it's not. But that perfection is not what we're about here. We're about making a difference. So I'll end with that.
They're human beings, right? It's not a, this is not a picture that we're painting. They're not robots, they're human beings. And
exactly.
we're making a difference for each individual human. Carlene has a question that says, can you address, whether here or offline, anything you can say about the situation for LGBTQ youth and the safety of visitors? So this is a very interesting question. Kenya, it is still illegal in Kenya to be gay, technically. However, there is a vibrant life of LGBTQ people in Kenya. We have students who are part of the LGBTQ community. They are accepted and supported through that. Part of our sexual and reproductive health programming addresses this, how to be safe regardless of sexual orientation or how you identify. It's not something that we've had any issues with in terms of like people being targeted or anything like that. So we've not had any issues. There have been a few students who at boarding school have come out as being LGBTQ. The schools will identify them and may contact us and say, these students need therapy, and we're very careful. We don't send them to conversion therapy. There's nothing like that. We send them to a specific therapist that helps them navigate how to be part of the LGBTQ community in a country where it's illegal. So they have made big strides socially. It's very much more socially acceptable now as Nairobi has modernized. The globalization with smartphones and social media and all of that stuff has added to it. And so it's becoming much more socially acceptable. And I think it's only a matter of time that the laws will catch up, especially given how internationally known the city of Nairobi is. So that's a very good question, something that's very close to my heart. And I'm working closely with a couple of board members as well to make sure that those students are supported. Keith, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the sexual and reproductive health program that we have, the way they do it is they have what they call peer providers, which are kids, of the same age. So they're maybe the 1 or 2 years older than the kids they're counseling. And one of our counselors is a young gay man, and he's quite obviously gay, and he's been very accepted, and I think he's been very effective. I mean, I think it's been good for everybody that he was part of that program and volunteered. I mean, he wanted to do it, and he wanted to be one of the leaders, and he's stuck it for several years. He's getting older now, and so he'll probably move on, but he was a real addition to the program.
I don't know if this is part of the question either, but we also have queer identified sponsors who talk to their students and write their students, and the students accept them just as much as anyone else. And so it's definitely more accepting in our community. And as Michelle was saying, growing than having any issues. We haven't had any issues that I know of, at least.
Good to know.
Yeah, thank you. I quite look like a target of somebody that would identify that way, and I myself have had no issues, if that helps you feel comfortable. So just kind of visually, I think people might identify me that way, and I've had no issues. So
thank you, appreciate that.
Actually, the question came up recently to me directly as well. Some of our a couple of friends of mine, a gay couple, was considering going to Kenya when Tom and I went, and they were very concerned about that. So I'm glad to hear this progress. I
probably wouldn't encourage any queer PDA or anything that might draw extra attention to yourself. At least maybe not in the slums. I think if you were in downtown Nairobi, it might be a bit easier, but I don't think there's a whole lot of people being targeted. Like Keith said, we've had a few students who live in the slums who are clearly queer in one way or another and have had no issues other than like the institutions being like, this is technically illegal. How are we going to handle this? But socially, they haven't had any issues. So it's a funny line to walk, the legality thing. So I'm encouraged by the the social acceptance of it.
Good. Well, we're a small group that's left here, and there are so many other things that we could talk about. I didn't even touch on the entrepreneurship program, but we can do that another time. Thank you so much for organizing this.
Yes, and in fact, we will do it another time. Great segue, Kim. Hopefully this was helpful for folks and valuable for folks, and we're going to do a 3-part series. So the next part that we'll do will focus around the Kenyan school system and education and boarding school and just what it looks like, terminology to be a student in Kenya. And then our 3rd part of the series is exactly what Kim was talking about, is about programming. So we're going to hear and do a deep dive into all the different programming that we help students have their holistic identity, and that we're supporting them in more than just their education. So watch out for that. And then we're also hosting a sponsored trip to Kenya in either late February 2023 or early March. And so if you're interested in potentially going or hearing more about it, let me know. I'll put you on the sign up list, and we're going to have, I'm going to do like an orientation Zoom just like this, where I'll answer questions and we'll have the itinerary and pricing and everything. So if you're interested in having the life-changing experience like Kim did, just let me know and I'll get you on the list.
And going on safari in nearby Tanzania or the Masai Mara is pretty awesome too.
Yes, Carlene, I will put you on the list.
It's a long flight, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
I've flown to Singapore and South Africa before, so
there you go. You're familiar then.
Yep. You know the drill.
Yep. I just last night booked my flight. I'm going the end of September again. So was just looking at those flight times last night and being reminded of that. But it's totally the energy that you gather being there just sustains you for weeks and months afterwards. It's really, really incredible.
It's a good time to reread War and Peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if anyone else has anything, Kim or Masham, thank you all so much for coming. I know we took up a little bit more of your time than planning, but I hope to see you all again soon at some of our other online events. And Michelle, you have something.
You're muted there, Michelle.
No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a question. I'm a fairly new sponsor. It's been a little over a year, and my student seems to really want to impress me, which is great. But what is a good way I could let my young man know that it's okay to not be perfect? What would be a good way to present that? It's because he's always trying to say, I want to be a pilot, and I don't want him to think that I'm only doing this to become a pilot. I want him to know that, do you get what I'm asking? Is how can I encourage him in a way that is very non-judgmental of anything he chooses, and that if he wants to be a pilot, he will be a pilot. Do you know what I'm saying?
How old is he? How old is your student?
He's 11.
Yeah. Do you have any advice on that, Kim?
Yeah, I was going to defer to Kim as well.
I know that a lot of them, they want to be pilots and they want to be doctors.
Yeah.
I think it's adorable and awesome. And I think they just don't know, none of us did when we were 11. I don't know. Duncan wanted to be a pilot when he was 8. And he's now 22, and he went to trade school for auto mechanics. And, I think just like with any kid that you would encounter, just encourage them along the way. This week he might want to be a pilot. Next week he might want to be a butcher. I don't know.
Yeah, you can do whatever you put your mind to. I'm here for you no matter what. Go reach for the stars,
Yeah. But yeah. I know what Michelle's saying though, because a lot of the communication was kind of, when they were little, it was kind of formulaic.
Yeah.
I am fine. How are you? I love you. I hope you're great. I want to be a pilot. I'm doing well in school. I've got, all great grades. And you want to kind of get back past that kind of superficial conversation.
Exactly.
It'll come.
It's a little bit hard. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It'll come.
I appreciate that.
Even my student who I've met in person, she's 13, and I'm just now starting to like get over that hump where she's actually able to write to me like she's a human being, not like an algorithm that's putting together, this is how you write a letter. But they've never written letters before. This is their first time learning how to write this way in English. And you're just like an idea.
And on a computer.
And on a computer, they've never used computers before. And so it's all like, you can think of it as kind of just practice for them at this point. They're learning how to write letters. They're trying to figure out how to relate to you also. So I think anything that I agree with Kim, like you can be anything you want to be once they get into high school and start getting these grades on things that matter. They have meetings with their case managers where they actually dig into like, okay, you say you want to be a pilot, but you got a D in math. So maybe let's talk about something else that might suit you better. And so they're going to kind of get some of that real world, like, let's be more pragmatic about this training with their case managers. So I think you as their sponsor can just be this kind of cushion for them.
Yeah.
And know that if he's 11, it'll come within the next year or two. I think you'll see it start to shift over and he'll start sharing some things with you that are a little bit deeper than what you're getting right now. Videos also help. If you can send a video back and forth, I find you might be able to start to see little bits of something come through, and it'll come.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anything else? Any other questions anybody has? That communication piece is tough when they're little. Keith only sponsors older kids for this reason.
No, I love the young ones.
Yeah.
I think the little ones are cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are cute, but they don't know what's going on.
Keith, I like the older ones too. They're in like high school. So that's my jam.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions from anybody? That was a good question, Michelle. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you'll go to Kenya. I hope you'll join our other events as we continue to talk about what life is like in Kenya. If you come to more of these, you might kind of get some more ideas of things you can ask them about, different questions you can ask them, or things they might be interested in. So thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.